Welcome and thanks for tuning in. My name is Shanoah and this is Vanguards of Democracy. Our guests today have each made their career through their ability to get up in front of an audience, connect with them, and then inspire them. Senator Charles Rodriguez, who will be joining us to discuss the Puerto Rican campaign for statehood, what that means and what it would take to achieve. But first, I'm here with artist and inspirational speaker Shanoah Washington to take a look at how arts can shape and save young adults looking for a sense of purpose in their life. That interview starts now, so don't go anywhere. Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Vanguards of Democracy. I'm Shanoah. Thank you for joining us, and we are going to have some uplifting information today in a world of we've got some rough news going on, particularly if you live in Florida and you're watching this from Florida. You know, we're not surrounded by good news sometimes here, but we're going to have good news today. And I'm happy to have the guest we have on, Shanoah Washington. Thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to learn a lot today. Someone told me they heard you and it was one of the most inspirational talks they've ever heard. And this is someone who, when they give praise like that, I got to find out what's what. So I just want to ask, tell me about yourself. Tell me your story. Tell me what's up.
Well, I am Shanoah Washington Davis. I'm 29 years old. I grew up in South St. Petersburg, Florida. And a little bit about my story. I was raised by my grandmother, who she was a single parent for me. My mom and my dad, unfortunately, weren't able to be in my life because they were caught up in the street life. And for that reason, my grandma had to take me on. And she moved originally from California to here in Florida. And she worked as a nurse. And, you know, she had her own troubles, just trying to make it as a single Black woman in the hood, trying to raise me up. And a couple of unfortunate events took place. By the time I got to middle school, I had experienced domestic violence. I had been raped and just a lot of tragedies. I had mentioned before that the cards that were dealt to me in life weren't even worth playing. And so at that moment, that all of these things were occurring and I'm in middle school, it's hard to process, very hard to process. And so my life started going downhill and it was on a trajectory that just wasn't good. It wasn't going to be sustainable. It was a self-destruction happening. And so finally I was able to meet some really cool people, two really cool, amazing people that were unlikely for me to have encountered. They were very unassuming. It was a gentleman named Mr. Dr. Alex Harris and Mr. Murphy, and they introduced me to the Arts Conservatory. And there I began to learn how to write poetry. Like I already could write, you know, it was a natural thing, but learning how to write it and then perform it as spoken word. And in that transition, I was able to like really find my voice and to put words to the trauma and to the hurts that I was facing, ultimately allowing me to get on a right path and to start thriving in life.
That I know there's a lot more to go, but I want to stop right there. Tell me about when you began to process it, or when you began to realize that maybe you were on a self-destructive path and you wanted to do different. Was it the exposure to the arts itself? Was it the fact that the poetry allowed you to work through it? Or how did that happen? When did it happen? What did it feel like?
So the aha moment or that epiphany moment for me was I was at this place called the Royal Theater. It was a boys and girls club, but it was also the home at one point for the Arts Conservatory for teens. And we had just gotten an award letter that says, hey, we want you guys as Poetic Collage Youth Society to come to St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands, to come and participate in our literary arts festival. And so when I got that letter, my first thought was, me? Shanoah, who's been through all of this, someone from another place far, far, far away is seeking me to come participate and to share my story, to share the deepest depths of me through my poetry and spoken word on an island and to come participate. They sought me out. That was a game changer for me.
And what age was that?
I was about 14.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So go back now. You're excelling in the arts. What's next? Keep going.
So then what's next is we're traveling all over, sharing our different artistic crafts. So for me, I'm poet, spoken word artist. The dancers are dancing, so we're just traveling everywhere, sharing and giving back and promoting healing in the different communities that we would go to. So fast forward a little bit. Now I'm 18. I get a surprise. I'm at the poetry spot, literally just spitting rhymes. Out walks Nick Cannon.
Oh, nice.
and everyone's freaking out. I don't see him yet.
Right.
Everyone's freaking out. I'm like, oh no, did they not like my poem? And then all of a sudden the crowd clears and he's there. He's standing right there and he's saying, Shanoa Washington, we want to honor you as a recipient of the Teen Nickelodeon Halo Award.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And the Halo stands for helping and leading others. So in 2011, I was nominated and a recipient of that award.
Wow. Yes. Keep going. This is great. What's next?
So then after that, I say, now I'm an adult. I have to find out how to carve a way for myself in society. I have to be able to give back. So just to actually do like a flashback, the entire time that I'm doing these arts and I'm helping, I have a mentoring program, which is what I was honored for with the Teen Nickelodeon Halo Award, was for my service to the community.
What sort of mentoring program?
Yes, it was for young ladies. So we would teach them etiquette. We would teach them social emotional skills. We would teach them how to present themselves to society. And just
you wanted to be those two people that helped you. You wanted to be that or offer that to some next generation, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so that was the aim of the mentoring program. So the entire time I'm doing this, I'm also in school. And so I graduated high school early and I did the early admissions program. So I was at the college campus, even though I was supposed to be in the high school. So now I'm having to find out, well, what is it that I really, really want to do in life? So I became a forensic specialist. I did everything that I needed to do. I've got my first associate's degree. I'm proud. I'm like, I did it.
Forensic as in like CSI type
stuff? Oh,
yes. As in like the investigation discovery shows that I watch all the time?
Yes, like dusting for fingerprints, cyanoacrylates, super glue fuming.
When I'm not here, I am watching some investigation discovery.
Yes.
Go ahead. Okay, I got it.
Well, that is what I went to school for originally. Right. I completed it. I received my first associate's degree in that. So then I went back and received another associate's degree in crime scene technology. And then I went back again, got my bachelor's in public safety administration, and then did another certification along the lines of forensics. So did a lot of schooling.
Right.
Finally got out of school and decided, I really love forensics, but my heart is in serving people in the community. So then, what better way to serve people than to watch their children, to teach their children, to work with their children, to grow that next generation, the legacy that people have. They're entrusting me to help groom and raise up their legacy.
And that's what you're doing now?
Oh, that is what I am doing now.
And where?
So I have a home daycare. It's a large family childcare home daycare, and it's located in the Seminole Largo area. And we serve 12 children, and the population that we serve are children who have autism and behavior issues and speech delays. We specifically take in the children with the special abilities that have been asked to leave other child care settings.
How do parents find you?
So parents find me. I take a community voucher called ELC, which is the Early Learning Coalition. So they refer families to us that receive their help. Also on social media, you can find me on Facebook, the standard social medias, but mostly word of mouth.
Right.
Mostly word of mouth or through a referral agency if your child has a special ability.
When think about yourself in middle school, how proud is that person of you now?
The middle school version of me is so proud. She is rolling on the floor, hands up, saying, you made it. You did it.
You made a hard turn and you made it
Yes.
young.
Yes.
Like a lot of people maybe will make that turn when they're older, but you made it at a time when, when I was growing up, you would see it at that age when people would kind of make the decision, I'm going this way or I'm going this way. And it's amazing how in middle school, you're making a life-changing decision, don't even know it.
Didn't even know
Don't
it.
even know it. And then your life proceeds down a path and you're here.
Yes. But I would also like to credit it also to my faith. Once I became an adult, let me say this. My grandmother raised me in the church, so I was very familiar with it. But as far as taking it seriously, not until I became an adult. And so that has been what has helped sustain me through all of this is my faith and my hope in Jesus and things like that. And so I'm also full-time ministry aside from everything I'm doing in the community and everything as far as like working with children.
The ministry.
So right now I am attending a ministry called Favor of God. And so right now we're a newer ministry and we're up and restarting and we're looking to reach as many people as possible to have them to come and to work alongside of us to help reach other people.
Tell me what advice you would give to other young women that age when you made the turn. What advice you given to those young women about life, about self-awareness, about success?
Yes, what I would say is one mistake does not define your forever. That when the pieces seem like they're scattered everywhere, it's okay to take a moment and to begin to pick them up and place them back together. It's going to be a very hard journey and a very hard road, but you're cut out for it because you already made it past the hardest part. And for you to be able to be picking up the pieces, that means you've already started overcoming the adversity. And so all it takes is consistent decisions and consistency and a courage to keep going and to press forward.
Wow. Okay. That was really good.
Oh, well, thank you.
That was very good. The forensic, the CSI stuff, let's talk about that a little bit. Do you regret doing it, or was that a journey you needed to go to get where you are now? Or tell me how you feel about all that schooling now that maybe you're not using right now, even though you loved it at the time.
Well, what I would say is I don't regret going. It actually was a very good time in my life. That's what helped me build the consistency because you have to show up to class and do your work. What I would say is that I'm happy in being a provider and working with early learning. I'm very happy in that. If I need to, I would go back to forensics. I would go. But right now, my interest is serving young children and their families. I'm jumping around here because I love your story. You have a lot going on, right? You got the ministry, you got childcare, you got mentoring and other stuff going on. How do you maintain like work-life balance? How do you maintain it all? So the honest truth is I maintain it through prayer. I start off my morning praying. I end my day praying. Everything has its appropriate place, and I have learned to create boundaries. So childcare ends at 5:30. Ministry starts at 6:30. So just keeping everything in its place and bringing my best to each time that I have the opportunity to serve in a different capacity. So then I feel fulfilled. And because I feel fulfilled, I don't have the need to like, well, let me go do this and this and this and this.
Right. Right. The ministry, does it have you have a physical location, or tell me about the ministry, the details of it.
So my pastor, her name is Linda Mitchell, and the church is located off of Armington Road and 77th Avenue North in Largo, Florida, and so we're a storefront location, but very powerful move of God happening there every single service.
Right. I have a question about daycare. Right.
Yes.
Parents, how does a parent evaluate if it's a good daycare to send their kids to? Like, if you pass by a sign or you hear word of mouth, like, oh, maybe I want to use that person. How does a parent evaluate whether it's safe, it's good for their kid?
Yes. So a way that a parent can evaluate is through the credentialing of the provider. So I have my national CDA, I'm NAFCC accredited and Gold Seal accredited. Not every home daycare or not every provider has the same level of accreditation. It requires you to go to school. It requires for you to take training hours, and it requires for you to have continued education. They also would know based on the changes within their children. Children repeat what it is that they're learning on a daily basis. So it's in what the children are saying. It's in their growth.
When they come back home and how they're acting. Yeah.
Yes.
I want to end on this good note. And this is the question. What advice do you have for kids and young adults who feel like their environment is making it more difficult than usual for them to succeed? So this is similar to the other question I asked, but this is kind of not just kids, but anyone who's facing these obstacles. You have faced many more obstacles than most, and here you are on the other side. How do you get through it?
So in the midst of a crazy environment, you have to create a space of peace for yourself that would allow you to think clearly. We know that environment is important because you can't grow Florida oranges in California soil. So we know that environment is important. So when your environment is all hectic and all hell is breaking loose, take that moment to create within that a safe place in your own mind so that your thinking can be freed up, so that you can become strategic on your next move. Because as cliche as it is, your next move must be your best move. If not your best move, then how will you get to the next place to succeed?
Tell me about spoken words. We're going to end on this. Do you do performances, or because I'm actually going to a spoken word performance tomorrow night. It's my first one ever. It's funny that this would come up. Do you do performances, or do you still do that? Or
yes, I haven't been on the scene in a little while,
right?
And I haven't spent any poems in a little while, but I've been writing. And I'm getting back out there on the scene, and I have some bars, some words. I have some stuff to unleash from the depths of my soul into this atmosphere. So I am excited for you. It's going to be quite an experience.
One of my friends in the community is saying he's doing it, and I was like, this would be neat. I've never done this before.
Well, I'm going to come rock the mic wherever you going. So you let me know.
It is actually here in Ybor City somewhere tomorrow.
All right.
I think it's at the Improv tomorrow, like 7 or 8 o'clock. So no, I'm not performing. I'm watching.
I'm going to perform for you
then I'd like to see. Then yes, I'm all about it. Thank you for joining us. I told you we had some good news for you. That was inspirational. I'm always fascinated by particularly your story of how young you changed your trajectory.
Thank you.
And I'm just, that's hard to do. That's hard to do at any age. But what you overcame and where are you at now, I love it. That's why I knew this was going to be good. I appreciate you joining us. No, thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Vanguards of Democracy. This is Sean Shaw again, and we've got a special show today. And, sometimes I like to avoid politics and talk about other things and maybe be a little nonpartisan. Not today. We're going to talk about some things today that are uniquely political. I'm here with someone that's got a really unique experience about not only about politics, but about international politics and international affairs. But I want to introduce Senator Charlie Rodriguez. Thank you for coming on today. First thing, Senator, I want you to just give background so my audience knows how big a deal this is. So just give background of kind of your political career, your kind of growing up and all that good stuff.
Well, thank you, Sean, for having us here in your program. It's a pleasure to be here. I started very early in politics in Puerto Rico because it's very passionate. The politics
I saw
in Puerto
13,
Rico.
14 or something like that. You got me beat.
Right, because, we start very young, and in the local political parties, they have organized youth chapters around the island. So I started in my ward where I lived in the city of Carolina. And afterwards, I became the city youth chapter president. And after that, I ran for, I became the statewide statehood local party chair. And then I ran for office. I ran for in a large seat to the local House of Representatives. I was reelected. So I was there for 2 terms, 8 years. Then I decided to run for mayor at my city, and unfortunately, I didn't win that election. It was close, but I didn't win the election. And then I decided to go to the Senate, and I was elected 2 terms, 4-year terms to the local Senate in Puerto Rico. And I initially was the majority leader, and then I became the Senate president. And after that, being involved in politics in Puerto Rico locally, I decided to run for chairman of the Democratic Party of Puerto Rico. Now, don't be confused. In Puerto Rico, the Democratic Party exists as well as the Republican Party, but different that what happens here in the mainland. In Puerto Rico, the Republican Party, Democratic Party do not slate candidates at the local level. At the local level, it is the local political parties who slate candidates, and the parties tend to divide themselves among the status issue. You got the Statehood Party, which is the ruling party. You got the Status Quo Party, and you have a very small independence or pro-independence party. And within the Statehood Party, for instance, I'm a Democrat at the national level, but you find within the Statehood Party Republicans. To give you an example, our governor, he's a statehooder. He is a Democrat at the national level. But our non-voting delegate or congressperson to the U.S. House of Representatives, she's a Republican. But both were elected in the statehood ticket. So those things are kind of different. But it is important because we do have national primaries in Puerto Rico, presidential primaries, and it's important to establish a difference as we anticipate Puerto Rico becoming a state of the union. People start, getting into what means to be a Democrat, what it means to be a Republican, what are the differences. So we're very active locally. So I've been doing that recently, and I come a lot to the mainland to campaign in favor of state of Puerto Rico, because the people of Puerto Rico have voted for statehood, not once, not twice, but 3 times in the last 10 years. But Congress is just ignoring our plight, and we have to keep on knocking doors to see if it becomes a reality.
I want to ask you about statehood. I want to spend a majority of the time on statehood. The current status of Puerto Rico is what?
It's a territory.
What does that mean?
It means that we are subject to Article 4, Section 3, Paragraph 2 of the U.S. Constitution that says that all rules and regulations for the territories are adopted by Congress. And the U.S. Supreme Court has said that Congress, in that great power, can even discriminate against the territories in comparison to the states. And that is why Puerto Ricans who are U.S. citizens by birth, if we live in the island, we do not have the same rights as if we move to the mainland. In Puerto Rico, I cannot vote for the president. I cannot elect senators. I do not have parity in all the federal programs. And some rights of the Constitution do not apply to Puerto Rico. Whereas if I just hop on a plane and come to Tampa, I can almost immediately register to vote because I'm a U.S. citizen, and then I'm entitled to all my rights and obligations also as a U.S. citizen. So obviously in Puerto Rico, that's an issue which is very much of a concern. So the current party, or I should say, the current status is that we are a territory, and therefore all federal laws apply to Puerto Rico, except that we cannot vote for the president, and federal income tax does not apply on income sources from the island. Therefore, whatever I earn in the island, I do not pay federal income tax. However, if I earn money from outside the island, business I have in the States or in any part of the world, then I would have to file federal income tax. Besides those 2 things, everything else applies. And we pay payroll taxes, but we do not receive the same benefits as those who pay payroll taxes here in the mainland.
You mean Social Security? Or
right.
Okay.
Medicare and so forth.
Yeah.
So Medicare, that you got there an example. Puerto Rico, Congress does not apply the funding for a Medicare program as it does in the whole nation and D.C. In Puerto Rico, we are discriminated, and there's a cap, and they give us less money. And Medicare, there's also a problem with Medicare in terms of the payments that go to the hospitals. And so there is there is discrimination, but it's legalized because we are a territory, as 37 current states were before. You know, after the 13 original states, you had 37 territories or sovereign jurisdictions like Texas. You know, Texas was a republic, and then they became states. So that's what we have. Puerto Rico is in that path, different than D.C., I must say. D.C., as you know, wants to become a state, and I personally support statehood for D.C., but obviously D.C. is different because D.C. is not a territory. D.C. is a seat of the federal government, the national government created in our Constitution, and obviously it's a different treatment. But Puerto Rico is like Hawaii and Alaska, who were the most recent or latest territories to become state.
If you're born in Puerto Rico, you are a United States citizen.
Oh, yes.
Just with some different rights.
Right.
And as you said, if you take a plane, once you land in the United States,
Mainland.
by way of you being a United States, mainland.
Mainland, because Puerto Rico is U.S.
Right. By way of you landing here as a U.S. citizen, you can then start taking advantage of all those rights when you get to the mainland.
Yeah, they can run for office. I can register immediately. And you just get involved. That is why 6 million Puerto Ricans have moved to the mainland.
Right.
And only 3.3 remain in the island. People come to the mainland because there are more opportunities and there's more equal rights, whereas in Puerto Rico, we don't. Like, for instance, Social Security, supplementary Social Security, the SSI, right? The SSI is a law of Congress, and it doesn't apply to Puerto Rico. It applies to the 50 states, D.C., and I think the Mariana Islands, which are a territory, but not to Puerto Rico. And one of the members of the Senate, I remember, told me, well, Charlie, you don't pay federal taxes. And I say, and you know what, Senator? Those who are beneficiaries of the program in the mainland do not pay federal taxes because they're poor. That is why they qualify for SSI. So don't tell me that we're not entitled. We're U.S. citizens. I have to die for this country if there's a war. Actually, right now we have 25,000 men and women from Puerto Rico in the U.S. Armed Forces. And they are equal than their brothers and sisters from the 50 states in that they can die for this country. But they're different that they cannot vote for their commander-in-chief. So those are part of the discrepancies of being and inequalities of being a territory. And that is why people in Puerto Rico in the last 10 years has voted 3 times to become a state of the union.
I'm gonna subject our listeners to a civics lesson. What's the process to become a state? From a territory to a state?
Sure. Actually, it's very simple. It only needs a majority vote in the U.S. Congress.
Well, that ain't simple because our Congress can't do much. Well, that's true. I hear you.
That's true. But when I say simple, it's simple than having to amend the Constitution.
Right,
to amend the Constitution, you need 2/3 of the Senate, 2/3 of the House, and then 3/4 of the state legislatures. Right. In our case, in any territory can become a state, and that's the way it has been ever since the conception of the United States of America. Is that Congress determines, based on population, based on organized government in the territory, and based on the will of the people in the territory, and they go on and grant statehood. And it's simple in that you only need a majority vote, but it's been very difficult for us to get that majority vote.
Tell me why. We've had a Democratic Senate and House. We've had a Republican Senate and House. Both have been in charge, and neither has done this. I know what I've read as to why it hadn't happened, but you're the best person that I can ask. What's going on with Congress not acting on statehood?
Well, first, there was a time that Puerto Ricans, we were the happy colonials. We were happy to be a territory of the U.S. But after the hurricanes Irma and Maria, after the earthquakes, after the bankruptcy of the local government, after Promesa Act, which was a law approved by Congress that ripped the local government of its authority to deal with the budget, which is something so essential for any government in any place. People in Puerto Rico realize that we will always be at the end of the line while we remain being a territory. And people say, hey, we're fed up. We want to be a state. Now, before they would say, hey, Puerto Rico can't be a state because culturally we're different. Sure. Puerto Rico, our roots are Spanish roots. I mean, are Hispanics, and we're proud of our heritage and of our culture. But listen, 6 million Puerto Ricans have moved to the mainland, and if you go to or Tampa or Orlando, some neighborhoods, it's like you're in Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I fool around. I say, hey, sometimes I eat more Puerto Rican food when I'm in Tampa or in Orlando than I
Seminole County, Osceola County.
Yeah.
Those counties are changing huge demographic shifts,
right?
And it's because of that.
That influence. And what I'm saying is, hey, just because I have equal rights doesn't mean I have to abandon who I am, my identity, my culture. So people in Puerto Rico realize that. So there's been a change. So really what we need now is to have a bill approved. Now there's a bill filed in the Senate and in the House. In the House, it's H.R. 1522, filed by a Floridian. The author is Darren Soto, who's from Puerto Rico. Also his parents. Yeah. And he has filed this bill, and he has right now 80 co-sponsors. He has 61 Democrats and 19 Republicans who are endorsing the bill. Actually, the whole Democratic Congressional delegation is supporting the bill. And out of the Republicans, there are 6 congresspersons from the Republican Party in Florida who are also endorsing the bill. And that bill is there, and we're hoping that it will come up for a vote at the committee, and then it would go to the whole body and decide.
Clearly, one of the reasons this hasn't happened is because the various parties want to know what type of state Puerto Rico will be if it is granted a statehood. Is it a blue state? Mm-hmm. Is it a red state? Is it going to go that's the basic kind of political calculations going into this, right? Is that part of the reason?
Oh, sure. It's always been part of the discussion. When Hawaii and Alaska wanted to become a state, people thought that, and in Congress, they thought that Alaska would be a Democratic state and that Hawaii would be a Republican state.
Wrong.
But what happened? It went the other way around.
Right.
You never know what people are going to decide. As Tip O'Neill once said, all politics is local. Right. You have to discuss the local issues. And hey, whoever discusses in a better way and brings solutions, that person will be.
A Republican 20 years ago is not a Republican now. And Democrat, it's all, it changes.
It has. And if you look at the way the Puerto Ricans have voted in the mainland, they tend to vote for the Democratic Party, but they are very conservative on social or family issues. Mm-hmm. Like for instance, abortion. Yeah.
Welcome to Florida.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And here I know it's a big discussion also, but in Puerto Rico, we commissioned a poll about 5 or 6 years ago, and the majority of people were in favor of statehood. The majority of people were in favor of applying the federal minimum wage and increase the federal minimum wage. Majority of people were wanted to have small government, but that's kind of conflicting. Small government, but at the same time, a government that would create opportunities for people to go up the ladder. But on the issue that they were almost equally divided and was on the abortion issue. About 52% were in favor, were against abortion, and 48% were in favor. So it's a very, very difficult issue in Puerto Rico. But what I say, I'm going to campaign for the Democratic Party. I believe in the Democratic Party and its principles. But I know that Republicans could have a shot. Because it all depends how you deal with the different issues. And we'll see what happens. But yes, it is part of the discussion. Donald Trump told our governor in a meeting that was aired public from the White House, he said to the governor, well, governor, if you can guarantee that I'll have 2 Republican senators, then we'll give you statehood. And the governor said, well, Puerto Rico would be a purple state. Well, he was very diplomatic. I would have told him, listen, Mr. President, the rights of the people to be equal cannot be subjected to who are we going to vote at the national level. It has to be based on the principles of this nation that all man and woman are created equal and should have, voice and voice their concerns in their government and elect their the people who make their laws.
In case the people on air didn't see it, and in case the people on radio can't see it, I rolled my eyes almost out of my head when you mentioned Donald Trump. I just want to make sure everyone knows that, because don't hold us as a country to anything that guy said, please. But
and he went to Puerto Rico and he started throwing paper towels.
That was the most offensive, condescending thing I've seen a president do in the face of a disaster in a very long time, only to be usurped by him again, doing it to someone else.
Right.
Talk about certainly the movement to Florida from Puerto Rico. This is huge. I was reading these stats, I think Hillsborough County is number 5 in the country as a destination. I know Miami and Orlando, like this, these are huge influxes that change demographics and change politics and change, D versus R register. They do a lot of things, and not just politically, but they do a lot of things. Just talk about that movement and what it means and why it's happening. Maybe you talked a little bit about the disparate treatment, which I never even thought about that, but it makes total sense.
Oh, sure. What happens is that in Puerto Rico, since you don't have equal opportunities for different programs that exist, many families decide to move to the mainland because here they can be beneficiaries of those programs, whereas in Puerto Rico they cannot.
And they're citizens, which is really important.
Actually, they're citizens when they come here. They can register their vote. They can run for office. You can't discriminate against a citizen. The equal footing doctrine of the states applies. I mean, you can't treat a state different from another. So people are entitled to that. And Florida, its weather is more or less similar to the weather in Puerto Rico.
And it's close. Yeah.
And it's close. And so they decided to come here. Another place where many Puerto Ricans are going also is Texas. And I was surprised to hear also that they were going to Georgia, to Atlanta. So the traditional place where Puerto Ricans would move used to be New York City or the Northeast. Now what you're having is that people from the island are coming to a more warmer states like obviously Florida, Texas, and probably Georgia, although it gets a little cold there sometimes, but not as cold as Chicago or let's say Boston or New York. And you're having Puerto Ricans who have lived 2 and 3 generations who have already lived in the Northeast, also coming down to Florida. But then, Florida is a place where most people are from Florida. Right. Not only people from Puerto Rico coming here, you got people from all around.
You're always shocked
coming
when
here.
You meet a Florida native.
Oh, yeah, truly. Yeah. Actually, I remember about 20 years ago, I was campaigning for a Democratic candidate for governor here in Florida. And I was going around doing my speeches and switching between Spanish and English. And the chairman of the Democratic Party of Broward County comes to me and say, "Why don't you move here and run for Congress?" And I said, "I don't think so. They'll call me a carpetbagger." And he said, "What? Everyone here is a carpetbagger." And I said, "Oh, you're right."
Yeah.
So anyway.
You're right. That's funny. We were talking off air about a specific situation I want to talk about a little bit on air. It was the 2018 race that I was in, and it was Andrew Gillum was running for governor. I was running for attorney general. Bill Nelson was running for U.S. Senate. And I believe a hurricane had just happened, and so there were lots of people moving to the mainland from Puerto Rico. And us as Democrats, we all knew that those people. Florida's always close. And we knew that the numbers moving here were enough to win or lose one of these statewide races. And we all knew this. We talked about it on calls every time. We all knew that we had to do something, yet it just seems like nothing ever got done on our side. But on the other side, which is the Republican side, they were putting a lot of effort into touching these people when they landed, getting them registered to vote, just right immediate. And Bill Nelson lost by what? 10,000 votes.
Yeah. And many people say he lost because he didn't get the vote of this sector, of this block of voters or so forth. But I have no doubt that he won the Puerto Rican vote, but he could have won it by a larger
he didn't win it by
percentage. That. And what happened was that Rick Scott was pretty smart in terms of addressing the concerns of the people of Puerto Rico. I remember being in Puerto Rico and participating for the message of the governor on the state of the island, which is something about budget and things like that. And all of a sudden they announced the governor of Florida is there. And I said, "What the hell is Rick Scott doing here?" And then one said, "Charlie, remember, he's running for the Senate." And he wants to obviously relay that message to the Puerto Ricans who are in Florida. Listen, I'm your friend. I'm here. And then he came out in favor of statehood for Puerto Rico because he knows that over 70% of the Puerto Ricans who live here are pro-statehood for the island. And, and you can understand why. They left the island because it's a territory. There's no full benefits, equal benefits. So they come here. So sure, they would like to see Puerto Rico a state. So he came out and he said, yes, I'm for statehood and I am going to be your senator over there in the U.S. Senate. Well, he didn't win the majority vote of the Puerto Ricans, but he got around 45% of the vote, which is pretty big. And I think that was a difference.
It was 10,000 votes. That's
well, right. Whereas I remember speaking with Senator Nelson on the issue, and he was reluctant to come openly in favor of statehood. I said, listen, that's what the people want. That's what they know. You should say so. And, the truth is that if you believe in civil rights, you have to believe in statehood, more so when the people have voted for statehood.
And it polls well.
Right. So, but he didn't. And probably I think he lost the election.
There's a lot of people who believe what you believe. Let me. We're getting to the end, but this is really cool. I'm glad we're doing this. I want to talk about abortion a little bit, but you mentioned it some because I look at polls a lot these days, and they reflect exactly what you said. And let's also understand that Florida is full of various communities. We like to just say this is black, this is white, this is Hispanic, and then we don't. But in Florida, there's no other state where that is incorrect like Florida. Because even just among black people, there's Jamaican, there's Haitian, there's African American, and Hispanic is Puerto Rican, Venezuelan, Ecuadorian, Cuban, and they all have different political leanings. But the one thing that does seem to be accurate is what you said in terms of conservative cultural around abortion and around things. Where does that come from? Is it religious based? Is that?
It is religious based.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church is very powerful in Puerto Rico. Well, it used to be more powerful before, but it is still. Most people you ask in Puerto Rico, what are your religion? What's your religion? They say Catholic. Some never go to church, but they'll say they're Catholic because it's kind of a cultural expression of saying identity. But the Catholic Church is against abortion, and the Protestant churches in Puerto Rico are also against it, and they do exercise an influence, and that's what happens among the other Latin Americans who come here. I mean, they come from this very church Catholic oriented community, so they're against it. So it's very difficult. The way I just put it, I said, listen, it's not an issue of being for or against abortion. Probably. If you ask me, I probably would not think about an abortion, but hey, I'm a man. I mean,
it's about choice.
It's choice, and it's a woman who would have to decide.
No one's pro-abortion.
Right. It's choice.
No one. That's the first thing you want to do. Right. But we are for allowing people, particularly women, to have autonomy over their body and the ability to decide what they want to do. Right. That's what it's about.
So that's the issue also down there. We try to explain it, but it's very difficult to explain it. So it's been an issue that for many years, people would just put it under the carpet and try not to talk about it, because when you do, it's very difficult to discuss the issue. But recently in Puerto Rico, a very rightist independent senator from a very small political party who is it's a party organized around the beliefs in church and so forth. She came out and she introduced this bill, and she was able to get some other members of other parties, even members from the Statehood Party, to sponsor her bill. So that bill is now part of the discussion, and it's very difficult to discuss that issue. But the Democratic Party in Puerto Rico, we came out with a statement saying, listen, we're against this bill. We think it does affect the rights of the women who have the right to decide over their own body. And according to what was a decision of Roe versus Wade, because obviously Roe versus Wade says in the first 3 months, there's no restrictions. On the second period of 3 months, that then comes whether or not the the fetus is developed fully, that it could survive outside the womb. And then obviously the last trimester where that cannot happen. So really, Roe versus Wade take cares of it. But then when they start hearing bills that have been approved, like in Texas, like in, what was it, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma just banned it completely.
Yeah. You say, hey, that is.
And like Florida, we banned it after 15, is it 2 weeks or 15 weeks or something? Some outrageous, with no exception, for incest or abuse or even danger to the mother, unless you find 2 doctors to agree that it would be a danger. Not even 1 doctor.
Not one, had to be 2. Yeah. It's just putting obstacles. And what the Supreme Court has said as of today.
I was about to say, that Supreme Court said it. I am mighty worried.
Right. But what they said up today, what's the law, is that you can put some restrictions, but these restrictions in the second trimester and the last in the second trimester, but these restrictions cannot go as far as to be an impediment for a woman to have an abortion if she wants to have it. And what you're seeing is that these bills that have become law go too much to the extreme to make it very difficult for a woman to do that. So
I think that's the point of the bills, is to find out where this court, not that court, they want to know what this court, what the line is. And that line, unfortunately, I believe has moved.
Oh, it
and
has.
I hope the line still exists. But that's, yeah.
You know, I still have some hope that the Supreme Court will, you know, at least 1 or 2 of the justices who have been appointed by Republican presidents that would, you know, try to look at this from a different perspective and not just a religious one or a ultra-conservative one, and probably see, listen, we can agree that maybe some restrictions can be put in place, but it can't be these restrictions that go on to practically avoid or impede for a woman to have an abortion. So I don't know. Let's see what happens. But in Puerto Rico, it's been a discussion right now. The bill was in committee, and the person who chaired the committee, who is the author of the bill, she wanted to bring the bill without any discussion, without any public hearings. Obviously, it was an uproar. We're having public hearings now, and but I think it will pass the Senate. I don't know what's going to happen in the House, and I don't know what's going to happen if it comes to the governor's office.
Well,
because it becomes political.
No, well, next time you're in Tampa, I'd love to have you back, because I might take you up on a bet as to what you think the U.S. Supreme Court's going to do on Roe v. Wade. You're more hopeful than me. I think it's in trouble. But anyway, Senator, this was great. I appreciate you making the time. I know you've got other things going on, and this was a special kind of taping we did, but this is really informative to a segment of our viewers they're going to be fascinated by this. It's going to be really cool to watch this, and we're going to spread this around. But I appreciate you having.
Well, thank you for having me.
The time to do this. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Vanguards of Democracy is funded and produced by Vanguard Attorneys, a local personal injury law firm serving the Tampa Bay area with ingenuity and an indomitable work ethic. Don't forget to follow Vanguards of Democracy on YouTube, or download episodes on your favorite podcast streaming services like iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And lastly, we're excited to announce that we're launching our new landing page, www.vanguardsofdemocracy.com, where you'll be able to ask questions, recommend guests or topics, and stay up to date with news and announcements. It'll be great. If you know how to bookmark a website, this is the one that'll make it worth it. Thank you.